It was a tense afternoon in a packed global summit hall. The air was thick with anticipation, whispers echoing through the corridors. Leaders from across the world had gathered, but two figures stood out above all others. Former U.S. President Donald Trump, known for his blunt style and fiery speeches, and Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young and determined leader of Burkina Faso. The cameras zoomed in. Trump, confident and commanding, had just taken the stage. His gaze swept the room before landing directly on Traoré. "Sit down," Trump said sharply, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a thunderclap. For a moment, silence. The crowd gasped. Everyone expected Traoré to back down, to obey the older, more powerful man. But Traoré's eyes did not waver. His jaw clenched, his shoulders squared. This wasn't just a political moment. It was a test of courage, a clash of wills. Few knew the full story behind Traoré's rise to power. Born into a country long struggling with poverty and violence, he had lost friends and family to conflicts many had forgotten. His mission wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. As a child, he had watched his people suffer, their voices drowned out by the powerful nations that controlled global affairs. Now, standing face to face with Trump, Traoré carried the hopes of millions. He wasn't just defending his seat, he was defending the dignity of his people. The world saw a captain. But inside, Traoré felt the weight of history pressing on his shoulders, reminding him that this moment was bigger than him. When Trump told him to sit down, it wasn't just a command. It was a challenge to everything he stood for. Then, Traoré spoke. His voice was calm but filled with quiet strength, echoing clearly through the hall. "No, Mr. Trump," he said simply. "I will stand for my people, for my country, and for the truth." The room fell into stunned silence. Eyes widened, breaths caught. The unexpected defiance wasn't just rebellion, it was hope. Trump's face flickered with surprise, then a rare moment of respect. Traoré's words weren't just a comeback. They were a declaration that the world was changing. No longer would young leaders from Africa be pushed aside or silenced. That moment, raw and electric, marked the beginning of a new chapter in global politics, one where courage and dignity stood tall against the old order. After Traoré's bold refusal, the entire summit hall seemed to freeze. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and world leaders exchanged uncertain glances. The usual order of power, where seniority and wealth commanded respect, was suddenly challenged. Trump's eyes narrowed, clearly caught off guard. This young captain from a small African nation was not just standing his ground. He was shining a spotlight on the world's inequalities. Traoré's gaze was steady, unshaken by the magnitude of the moment. He wasn't angry, just determined. The crowd felt the weight of his words, the strength behind them. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about justice, pride, and the voice of the unheard. Back in Burkina Faso, Traoré's journey was marked by hardship and loss. His family's village had faced repeated threats from armed groups. He lost childhood friends, and the memory of those nights, when the stars seemed to disappear behind smoke and fear, never left him. But it was also a story of hope. Traoré learned early that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to stand up despite it. Every decision he made on that stage was fueled by those memories. He wasn't just defending himself. He was standing for every family who had suffered in silence. News outlets buzzed worldwide. Videos of the confrontation went viral within hours. Some hailed Traoré as a hero, a beacon of courage and dignity. Others debated the meaning of his defiance, but the people of Burkina Faso, watching on shaky phone connections, felt a surge of pride. Their leader wasn't just a figurehead, he was a man who refused to be silenced on the world's biggest stage. And somewhere deep inside, Traoré knew this was only the beginning. The summit's cameras kept rolling, but behind the scenes, the atmosphere was charged with tension. World leaders whispered urgently in quiet corners. Many were surprised, not just by Traoré's refusal to sit, but by the strength behind his words. Some doubted a young leader from a small African country could hold his own against a global giant like Trump. But others saw a fire in Traoré's eyes, a fire that couldn't be ignored. In those hushed conversations, Traoré's name was spoken with respect and a hint of awe. A new chapter in world leadership was quietly unfolding. Later that night, Traoré sat alone in his hotel room, the weight of the day pressing down on him. He stared out at the city lights, but his thoughts were back home. He thought of the families torn apart by violence, the children who had no voice, and the dreams that felt so far away. It was hard. The burden of being a leader was heavier than most could imagine, but he reminded himself why he fought: to give hope, to be the voice for those who had none. This moment wasn't just about standing up to Trump, it was about standing up for his people. The next day, the summit reconvened. Cameras captured the faces of millions watching worldwide. The air was thick with expectation. Trump, usually unshakable, seemed more cautious. When he addressed the room again, his tone was measured. But all eyes were on Traoré. His quiet confidence had already spoken louder than words. That moment marked a turning point. The world was starting to listen, not just to what was said, but to who was saying it. And for the first time in a long time, the voice of a young African leader was being heard clearly on the global stage. As the summit moved forward, a quiet storm was brewing. The room buzzed with whispers, and the tension was palpable. Traoré sat calmly, his eyes scanning the faces around him. Knowing this moment carried more than just words, it carried the future hopes of his people. Every glance, every pause in the conversation felt charged with unspoken challenge. Trump's usual bravado seemed tempered, replaced by a careful calculation. The world was watching, waiting for what would come next. Traoré's silence spoke volumes. It was the calm before a storm of courage and conviction that would soon shake the very foundations of this global arena. Back in his hotel room that night, Traoré's thoughts drifted to his homeland. He thought of the children in dusty villages who had no voice in the halls of power. He remembered the faces of mothers who prayed for safety and fathers who worked tirelessly just to feed their families. His fight on the global stage was more than politics. It was personal. Every word he spoke carried the weight of their dreams and struggles. With tears threatening to fall, Traoré whispered a silent promise to himself: to never let their hopes fade, no matter the cost. The next day, cameras captured Traoré standing tall as he addressed the summit. His voice was steady, filled with a deep passion that seemed to resonate across the room. He spoke of justice, dignity, and respect, not just for Burkina Faso, but for all nations too often ignored. The audience was moved. Some leaders nodded quietly, others wiped away tears. This was more than a speech. It was a powerful reminder that true strength lies not in wealth or power, but in courage, heart, and unwavering belief. And in that moment, Traoré's words left a mark that would never be forgotten. The room was tense as Trump leaned forward, fixing his gaze on Traoré. "Captain," he said sharply, "why should the world listen to you?" The question was meant to unsettle him, to challenge his authority. But Traoré's eyes did not flicker. Instead, a calm, powerful smile spread across his face. "I speak not just for myself," Traoré began, his voice steady, "but for every mother who fears for her child's future, every father who works tirelessly to build a better life, and every person whose voice has been ignored for far too long." The room fell silent. No one expected such a heartfelt answer. It was a moment when raw humanity pierced the cold walls of politics. The world wasn't just witnessing a debate, it was witnessing the heart of a true leader. After his answer, Traoré sat down quietly, eyes steady on the crowd. silence that followed was heavy, but full of meaning. Trump opened his mouth to respond, but something held him back. In that silence, the weight of Traoré's words hung in the air like a promise and a challenge. The room seemed to lean in, sensing that this was no ordinary confrontation. It was a crossroads, a test of respect, dignity, and courage. And Traoré, with nothing but his truth, had already won many hearts. As the summit continued, the exchanges grew less combative and more thoughtful. Traoré's calm strength inspired others to listen more deeply. Outside the conference halls, people across the globe shared clips of the confrontation. Tears streamed down faces as they saw a young leader stand firm against overwhelming odds. Messages poured in from all corners of the world: gratitude, hope, and a renewed belief that change was possible. For Traoré, the battle was never just political, it was personal, and now the world was beginning to understand why. The room was electric. After the heated exchanges and moments of silence, something had shifted. Traoré's bravery and calm wisdom had begun to ripple beyond the summit's walls. Whispers grew into conversations. Conversations turned into admiration. Even those who doubted before now looked at Traoré with newfound respect. He wasn't just a young leader from Burkina Faso anymore. He was a symbol of courage, a beacon for the unheard. That night, as Traoré prepared to leave, he knew this moment wasn't about winning arguments. It was about sparking change, a fire of hope in the hearts of millions. Back home, news of the showdown spread like wildfire. Families gathered around radios and TVs, eyes shining with pride and tears. Children saw a leader who stood tall when the world tried to push him down. Mothers whispered prayers, and fathers spoke of the strength they hoped their children would one day inherit. Traoré's words had crossed borders and oceans. He wasn't just fighting for Burkina Faso. He was fighting for dignity everywhere. His courage was now a legacy, inspiring countless hearts to believe in a better tomorrow. In the days that followed, world leaders, activists, and ordinary people spoke of that unforgettable moment. Traoré's powerful comeback wasn't just a response. It was a declaration. Respect is earned through courage and truth. And as the video of that exchange went viral, millions were moved, many to tears. If you felt the power of this story, the courage of a true leader, don't keep it to yourself. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Tell us how this moment touched your heart. Your voice matters. Together we can keep hope alive and inspire more stories of bravery, like Ibrahim Traoré's.